A musician,
long-distance kayaker,
a businessman,
she looks after animals,
artist,
author.
We interview remarkable people.
They're talented in so many different areas.
You're listening to The Dialogue.
89.7 FM Eastside Radio.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show, where I interview remarkable people. On the show today, I have James Stevens, founder of Roses Only and an entrepreneur. Now, James, I'm very excited to have you in the studio. The last time I was going to have you in the studio, I was unfortunately ill, so that kind of didn't happen. But you're here now, and you have an amazing, remarkable story for us. A story of, I don't know, what do you call it? A story of triumph, or a story of, you know, an immigrant who succeeded? Because your whole family, if you think about it, has been one long process of, you know, immigration from the day that Dad arrived and started his journey.
Well, I suppose I'm an Aussie. Dad was the immigrant, and I heard all the immigrant stories. You know, obviously, like most immigrants' children, I'm very proud of what you know, my father and mother achieved. It's fundamentally by just working damn hard and you know, obviously trying to think outside the square and trying to stand out. But I obviously noticed a lot of things that my folks did along the way, and you know, there's lots of learnings.
Your father literally started the flower business that you eventually grew into this phenomenal brand, Roses Only. He was, I thought, very entrepreneurial from the stories. You know, he came from such humble beginnings with your mom, and landed up, you know, as you said, bought product wholesale and divided into packages and went off and sold it at sporting activities and grew his team so that he became, you know, the team got bigger and bigger. He obviously had a vision for where he wanted to go. He obviously had an idea that he wanted to be more than just himself out there.
Yeah, I suppose it goes back to where Dad came from and what his you know, what his heritage was, and his heritage was that of you know, a young boy that was raised in on an island in Greece, seeing his father and uncles and what have you, you know, being incredible traders, who unfortunately lost everything in the Second World War when the Nazis came through and basically took everything that they'd put aside, everything from alcohol to tobacco to material to you know, gold sovereigns, unfortunately, which would have set them up for the post-war. But you know, Dad recalls the stories, obviously, that were relayed to him from his father in turn about, you know, his grandfather back in Asia Minor, who then had to migrate to islands nearby, and then, you know, unfortunately there was a second time destruction when the Nazis came through. So it was quite a horrific story, and you know, Dad shared that with us. So it was.
You said from an early age you remember sitting around a table eating with your family and listening to the stories of the landlords and, you know, the rents and the issues that had to do with, you know, these bricks and mortar businesses that were positioned. Your father started a flower business at Town Hall,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, after having done some other things as well. But this was, you know, the beginning of the flower situation. And you said that became something that you were very aware of, you know, this issue with the surrounding elements of the business. Was that something that was really important for you to change when you eventually started working with your father?
Yeah, look, I used to hear those stories at nights, and you know, stories from that were, you know, whether it was a story about, you know, the rent's going to be hiked, or there's a potential loss of a tenancy, or you know, a landlord has, you know, back then it was State Rail, has come down to our store at Town Hall, and he's got, you know, there's someone from a dry cleaning group that wants to take over your tenancy, and he's willing to pay, you know, 50% more or 100% more than what you're currently paying, and but we'll give you a commensurate I suppose tenancy somewhere else on another station. And, you know, and Mum and Dad basically Mum being in tears at night and just not knowing which way to turn. But I felt that they always had to fight for their tenancies and for their goodwill, and I suppose that's all you have in a bricks and mortar store, especially in a flower business. You've got a location that becomes known as a location that provided quality and service, and that's I suppose that's all we had. So to lose that, to have the chance that could just be extinguished in a heartbeat was quite painful for Mum and Dad, and that occurred on so many occasions. That occurred there was I recall being on the phone to a Minister of Transport at one stage where someone came down and decided that this flower shop that was in an incredibly amazing location in a very prominent corner of Town Hall Station was going to be turned into a closed circuit television room for security purposes, and we were at a loss. We were thinking, well, surely they could do this from a lesser location. We were paying a huge rent, which obviously the government's getting a benefit from, but we had to go right to the top and lobby, which was unnecessary, to then have the minister say, I can't believe that in this day and age that where a closed circuit television room can be anywhere in the world, that it has to be there. So that's just one example. I could point to tens, many others like that, where it was just not sensible. And so I never wanted to be at the mercy of a landlord. That was something that was that was in the back of my mind always, and I thought the only way that I could do that was by creating my own brand, or a brand that would never be at the mercy of a landlord.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show, where I interview remarkable people. Today on the show I have James Stevens, founder of Roses Only and entrepreneur. From the age of 5, your father used to take you to the markets with him. Mm-hmm. You'd get to go and have a look, and you'd watch him feeling the flowers and looking at them and checking. And you must have learnt an enormous amount. I mean, you've used the word quality and service quite a few times since I started talking to you. That must be something, is that something you learnt from your dad, Peter?
Yeah, definitely. Dad was, would fly around the markets, and I just have to keep up. Must have been the fastest walker in the world.
Really?
He never ran, but he walked damn fast, and I think I've learned to walk fast as well. I think my wife always says that she's only ever seen the back of my head whilst walking. So that being said, I saw Dad always looking for the finest quality, and I would never ever buy anything if I would always have to buy the finest quality of whatever was available in Australia, and Dad did a similar thing. And then it was all about negotiating price, but it wasn't about what can we get for the money. It was all about, this is what I want the finest, and then it was all about negotiating price so that we can obviously on-sell it to our consumers at a reasonable price. So it's not rocket science, but I think it's
the basis of how you operate. I mean, I think sometimes the most successful people often have the most simplest philosophies. They just hang on to 2 or 3 things that they keep reusing over and over again, and that kind of gets them where they need to go. You went to university. Mm-hmm. You did a degree. I asked you if when you were growing up you wanted to be anything like a fireman, and you kind of laughed at me. So obviously that wasn't a dream of yours. You said you always knew you wanted to go into business.
Yes.
Was it always the family business you wanted to go into, or was it any business? I mean, were you just keen on the idea of business and negotiating and,
Yeah, I enjoy all business. I suppose I was possibly going to, and I did consider a banking career or investment banking or something along those lines. It was just fortuitous that my dad's business wasn't really a saleable business. It was a great cash flow business, back in the 70s and early 80s, but there wasn't a goodwill per se really, you had just had to work at it and work damn hard, which was also the other thing about the creation of a brand. A brand was always saleable, whereas something that was at the mercy of how long your lease would last wasn't overly saleable.
No, absolutely.
I found that just taking a good cash flow business and using that as a base for which I then could mould a different business was actually the way that I decided to go. So I suppose that's
the answer to my question.
Yeah.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show, where I interview remarkable people. On the show today, I have James Stevens, founder of Roses Only, an entrepreneur. Now, you grew up being looked after by your granny, who had come out after your mom and was there to cook and love and look after all of you. And you said you are, and she still is alive. You are incredibly close to her. She was a very special person for you. What did that relationship give you in terms of growing up? I mean, what have you got inside you from that relationship?
Oh, well, my grandmother was very, very special. I mean, without her, there's obviously my parents could never have, the whole notion of babysitting and a nanny, whatever, that just didn't exist. Definitely didn't exist back in our family, and definitely probably not in a Greek migrant culture. So leaving a child with someone strange or unknown to the family wasn't something that was done. So grandmum being there to feed us in the morning, pick us up from school, feed us in the afternoon, look after us till our folks got home every night when they'd come and collect us was really the equivalent of a carer being around. But it was a carer that and someone that just absolutely was selfless, and to this day all she's ever done for the family is from a matriarchal point of view just kept the family together, and I fear for what would happen beyond her life passing. But
she's 96.
She is 96.
She's phenomenal. She's quite remarkable.
Yeah, and she's very, very sharp. And she does. I think she's going to go for a while yet, because her mother, in turn, who I met, my great grandmother, died at the age of 110.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah. So look, I hope my grandmother has an equally long life, but she doesn't. Actually, she says that she's had enough of her life, so she's very, very content, and she always makes me happy, and I always laugh when I'm in her company.
Family is really important to you. You have 2 children, a wife that you're still happily married to. It's something that you prioritize above all. I mean, if I were to ask you what you'd love for your children to turn out to be like as human beings, what would be your answer?
That's actually really easy, because a lot of people actually ask me whether I consider myself successful, or what do I consider success to be. And I don't consider anything that I've done successful in business as what makes me successful or not. If I was to leave this earth, I'd like to know that I would be successful if my kids were useful to society. And that's all I want. I'd hate for them to be a burden on society in any way. If they can be useful contributors to this world in any way, and not a burden, I'd be a happy man, and that would be my mark of success.
Your mark of success. The Roses Only brand developed when you started off in a store, I think, in Chiefly Square. You were invited to take on, and you said for the first time you were in a space that was quite anonymous. It didn't have foot traffic. It didn't have, a whole lot of things that you had in the stores previously. And you built a call center. You said that was like the size of this room and had some phones in it, and you thought, this is what I'm going to do. Now, you had a really interesting marketing, idea of how to market Roses Only. Obviously, it was different from any other flower selling, marketing angle. How did you kind of come up with that? What did you decide that the market was going to be for this new business?
Well, it was long stem roses, and typically, I suppose I didn't need a focus group to work out what I felt was customary. And what was customary in for years and years was that men walked into my father's stores either late on a Friday night or typically, and would only remember the names of no more than about 2 or 3 flowers, but one was always roses. So one of the 3, if you asked any male to name 3 flowers, they actually struggle beyond 3 or 4.
What are the 3 that they would remember? Can you think of what they might be?
Roses is a definite. Sometimes they'd probably talk about carnations or freesias or something along those lines. Probably just subliminally they've heard of some words or some names or gardenia or whatever. Yeah. But roses always featured, and for some reason men felt that if they bought long stem roses, they'd get themselves either out of a mess or potentially
a bit lucky,
or get lucky, or sort out their anniversary gift, that last minute sort of anniversary gift or celebration. So, but we only saw men come in, once or twice a year into our store. So I was conscious of the fact that if I did market to that or that gender, I could only expect their custom to be once or twice a year. So that was a known fact. I decided to think, what could I do that would where would I find men? I found them in the Australian Financial Review. I felt that I had men with a wallet and a credit card that could quite easily order over the phone. So we did predate. This all predates the online surge that occurred 4 years after I set up in 1995. It worked quite quickly, and people started calling, whether it was the men themselves or an executive assistant or a personal assistant acting on behalf of a male. I know that sounds very sexist, possibly, but
no, not at all. Everybody markets to somebody.
Yeah, but it didn't take long for the recipients, being predominantly female, to then if they liked the product enough, I knew that they'd become advocates of the product. So and it didn't take long for us to build our female database as well.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue Show, where I interview remarkable people. Today on the show, I have James Stevens, founder of Roses Only and entrepreneur. This brand, Roses Only, listen, I don't know anyone who doesn't know it. I don't know anyone who, and everybody associates quality with it. You're getting long stemmed roses. You're getting big fat heads on the top of them. It's going to arrive in a box that looks exquisite. This idea of quality that you have imbued into this particular brand, do you think that is something that has cemented it as well as it has? Is it because of that high quality?
Yeah, look, that consistency in the quality, just it's almost a relentless pursuit of quality that I always stood for, and I couldn't stomach sending out something that would be an inferior product in any way. The product had to last, so there was a longevity aspect. Of course, seasonality has an effect on things. Where if it's too hot, obviously you don't expect roses to last as long. If it's too cold, there's certain things that make a flower last long or not, and the way you obviously take care of them. And we can't control the way someone takes care of them upon delivery, but we can try and obviously limit the risks somewhat by making sure that the product is fresh and the quality is second to none. So we taught people quality control that work with us. I would regularly scrutinize product. We would do customer surveys. We would ask recipients to send us in their photos so we could check.
Okay.
So there's lots of things that play out, and going online actually helped with that as well.
In 2013, your father was quite ill,
Mm-hmm.
and you got an offer to buy the business,
Mm-hmm.
which you discussed with your dad and you accepted. So, this was obviously a hugely pivotal moment for you on an emotional level as well as on a business level.
Look, I'd had a very, very tough year prior to that offer. when Dad was diagnosed, unfortunately, and quite a sinking feeling or a sunken feeling in my stomach for a long time to have to live with that, as a lot of people have had to live with when they found that someone they love has been diagnosed. It was an absolutely exhausting time mentally, look, when this offer came about, it wasn't about not thinking about it twice, but it was something that I genuinely had to take to my father, who was a 50% shareholder in our business. And, we discussed it. My dad said that, he sort of wanted me to make the decision. He said, "Son, you're going to be left with this either way. I'll let you decide." And that was very, very typical of Dad. And I was very fortunate that my father was always supportive of my decisions. I think that he knew that the smartest thing to do was to sell and to obviously secure and I suppose put a line in the sand as to some level of valuation for the business, and that we'd worked so hard for so many years. But I think if I decided to keep it as well, Dad would not have minded. But I suppose what I wanted to give him was a sense of, yep, you've worked really hard and this is what it's worth now. And he was very happy with the outcome. I was also very happy because it wasn't the end of, I've only sold the Australian and New Zealand rights to the business. So I kept everything outside of Australia, and I've then gone on to create the business or grow the business in Singapore. That had actually started when Dad was alive.
Okay.
The London piece had also started, but I've only just sort of re-energised the London Roses Only piece, and more recently, in the last few months, have launched in New York City.
Yeah. If I were to ask you, personality-wise, what do you think is your greatest strength as a man, as a human?
I don't know. It's really tough.
The thing that your X factor that kicks in even on the hard days.
I never give up. It's just absolute perseverance and just relentless to the point of being annoying. I don't forget and I don't let go of things, and I used to come in and suggest things to staff, and I think they thought that I was just going to go away and not remember it, a week later, a month later, 3 months later, 6 months later, but it always just comes back. It's like boomerang.
I often ask men this question, and it's quite hard, but what makes you cry?
Oh, thinking about my dad.
Yep. Okay. You've sold your business, have some capital,
Mm-hmm.
and are now moving into a whole lot of other areas. I mean, you walked in today literally like a gift store. So you've actually involved yourself. You're growing the Roses Only brand externally in Asia, America. You're going, all over. I know you're doing some flower businesses here as well, because you don't have a restraint of trade against being in the flower industry.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the most exciting project that you're working on at the moment?
Oh, look.
Well, there's several.
Yeah, there are quite a few, but I suppose I'm very, very proud of the way Roses Only's continued beyond the sale here in Australia. It's a beautiful product, but I and everything else that they do, all the other Only brands. But separately, I was very, I was watching other brands whilst I had my business here in Australia that I equally respected and thought, geez, they'd be lovely brands to be involved with. And two brands that I've just, 2 years ago, I bought into a business called Bockers and Pony, which is a fantastic hamper gifting brand. And in fact, it was a business that I probably wanted to acquire whilst having the other business at one stage. I did manage to buy in, and Leonie is the founder of that business, and she'd done an exceptional job with that brand. and she's someone that I trusted and respected, and we've managed to grow that brand immensely in the last 2.5 years since buying in post the sale of my business. Separately and more recently, very recently, I then took some equity in a business called and a directorship of a business called Snow Goose, which does absolutely beautiful fruit gifts.
They do exquisite hampers. I've had some of them. They're special.
They're stunning, absolutely stunning. And as far as I'm concerned, they're world class. They're of the caliber of and beyond, frankly, of a Harry and David in the United States. But Snow Goose is a beautiful product. They also do and I'm involved with their weekly corporate delivery service of fruit, which is called Fruit at Work and Milk at Work. And so, look, all that keeps me quite busy.
You're not slowing down. You're getting faster. You're getting faster.
Yeah.
What does your wife have to say about the fact that you're getting faster?
Well, yeah, it's a bit of a 24/7. Look, it's my golf. I'm not a golfer, and I don't ride in the mornings. This is what turns me on, and I really, really enjoy growing a business. But I particularly, I'm turned on by being involved with great brands that speak to what I stand for, which is that whole quality and service piece.
Now, we've come to the end of our interview. So the last thing I'm going to ask you, which is lovely and frivolous, you're on an island. You're allowed 2 things and they're not a human being. What are you going to take with you?
Oh, dark chocolate?
Yes.
Oh, that's really tough. There are so many things I'd like to take with me.
I know, it's hard, isn't it?
It sounds a bit...
Come on, just deliver it. Let's go for it.
I don't know. Is there ice on there? Because probably some champers, but maybe some beautiful port, chocolate and some
chocolate and port on the island.
Yeah,
that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I'm not sure how long I'll survive with just 2 products.
No, probably not for a very long, not for a particularly long time. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming in and chatting to us about your life and your success, and I expect that we're going to be hearing of lots more things that you're involved in. And what I love about what you do is that you bring quality into our lives, and you set the bar very high. And I think for all of us, that's something that we should all aim for, is to set the bar really high and to achieve incredible quality in our lives. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Natasha.
You're listening to 89.7 FM Eastside Radio. This is Natasha and The Dialogue. We will be back next week.